Warning: the following content contains explicit language and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised. You are now watching Our Mind.
On last week's show, we dived into the world of grocery stores and how they use psychology to turn your own brain against you. Today, we will explore the world of cinema and television, taking a look at a few cases where mental illness was a critical part of the script, and how well each example, if at all, did justice to the part. You're watching Our Mind with Michael Cheng. I hope many of you viewers at home have seen films with aspects of mental illness or similar themes before. It may not be the central focus of what you're watching, but usually writers like to throw in one or two characters just to add depth to their stories. This week's focus will be on behavioral psychology, which is the study and analysis of a person's observable behavior. Here to help us understand a bit better is our resident psychologist and film critic, Thomas Ellinidis.
Good. Thanks for having me. No worries.
Alright, so, Thomas, we're talking about behavioral psychology in movies and television. Could you explain to the viewers a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. The focus that we will be coming back to again and again today is behavioral psychology, as you mentioned. This is a theory that our environment shapes our behavior. Some of the examples that we will see are cases that lead to childhood trauma, stress in one's environment, and how different situations could lead to adverse psychological detriment.
And I believe a few of the examples that you've brought for us today are The Joker, American Psycho, Split, and Netflix's TV series, The Society.
Yes, Michael. All four of these are quite recent and popular portrayals of mental illness in film and television. So this way we can get a more accurate glimpse into today's media as a part of media from the past, where I think we can all agree people with mental illness were basically given no consideration at all and attention when their roles were written.
Okay, excellent. Now, Thomas, before we talk about these titles, we have a focus study that we like to bring up based on what we'll explain later on. This week's study is by Dr. Ian McKee of Adelaide University on why people seek revenge. So, and in quotes, people who are more vengeful tend to be those who are motivated by power, by authority, and by the desire for status, he says. They don't want to lose face. In the study, McKee surveyed 150 university students who answered questions about their attitudes towards revenge, authority, tradition, and group inequality. He found that the students whose answers showed deference to authority and respect for traditions and social dominance had the most favorable opinions about revenge and retribution. These personality, McKee says, tend to be less forgiving, less benevolent, and less focused on universal connectedness type values.
Alright, I'll be sure to keep that in mind.
Alright, great. Now let's take a closer look at some of these titles.
Can you please stop bothering my kid?
Sorry.
Arthur, I have some bad news for you. This is the last time we'll be meeting.
You don't listen, do you? You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts.
What do you do?
I'm into, murders and executions mostly. I have all the characteristics of a human being, but not a single clear, identifiable emotion. I simply am not there.
I've never seen a case like this before. 23 identities live in Kevin's body.
Did something happen?
Open the door!
flower on the pillows, a flower in the bathroom, like we're important. Who is that?
Maybe she can help us.
We're here! We're in here!
Don't worry. He knows what you're here for. He's not allowed to touch you. He knows that.
Everything that kept us safe is gone.
Why aren't you scared of me?
There's no civilization here, not until we start one.
When we all fall asleep, where do we go?
Just putting these ideas in their heads. Now they made her queen.
Careful.
Say it, spit it out.
You like the way things are?
What is it exactly? Today I'm thinking about
What did you have in mind?
things that are deadly.
We're not gonna ask for power. We're gonna take it.
Bury a friend.
I'm not afraid of you.
You should be.
We're so fucking in over our heads.
Do you want chaos?
They have too much power.
What do they say when we can't hear them?
Cannibal class, killing the sun. Bury a friend.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Wow. Certainly haunting stories in all four of them. If you haven't seen a few or any of these films and TV shows, I seriously recommend you go check them out and come back to the show. I'll give a bit of background for each one, but just a heads up, there will be a few spoilers in here, so if you're planning on watching them, this is your time to hop off the episode. Alright, Mr. Ellinidis, here you go.
Alright, sounds good. So, the 2019 rendition of Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix as the title character, showed Arthur Fleck before he became the Joker. In this universe, Fleck has a neurological disease which causes him to laugh uncontrollably, and the response from people around him is very far from friendly. You can see how this well-meaning and kind person becomes a bitter, cruel criminal due to the way that they're treated. Let's take a look at a clip from Joker to explain this better.
Please stop bothering my kid.
I wasn't bothering.
Just stop. What, you think that's funny?
I'm sorry. I haven't.
So, in this clip, it's from the beginning of the movie, and you can see that Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck is just on a bus, and he laughs uncontrollably. Even though he does his best to explain what is going on in his disease, no one's really listening. They're just treating him terribly regardless. And that's really what this whole movie shows. It's a stigma against mental illness, which in a way I think can be really good because it shows that this is a real thing, that there is stigma against mental illness and we need to be more understanding of it, although that's kind of the entire movie, which can be problematic. Behavioral psychology explains that due to Fleck's abusive environment of harassment from his peers and even his own mother, it shapes the way he acts in conjunction with his illness. From his suffering, Fleck takes revenge and kills 3 businessmen who work for Wayne Enterprises. A bit of a Batman connection there, which I think was really cool. And this solidifies his status as a criminal. I've got a bit of a positive and a negative for how they portray mental illness. The positive is they really do a good job at showing the stigma and hate against mental illness. Like we saw in the clip, even though he tries to explain it, nobody's very empathetic. But in a way, that's also my negative. They show too much of the negativity and one-sidedness, as opposed to showing maybe a society which is a bit more understanding. I think it would give the citizens of Gotham more sympathy and would have added a lot more depth to the film in general. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword there, so there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that the focus of media is to sort of shift from putting the spotlight on those people with these peculiar disorders to move on to those who treat these people in inequality. Because I think we can all agree that we're the ones that need to change, since those individuals that actually suffer from these diseases can't really do much than what they're already trying.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And actually, wow, that brings us nicely into our next example. It's a personal favorite of mine, and I'm really excited to talk about it. American Psycho. It's a similar sort of movie in the themes and the origins of the character. American Psycho starred Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman, and it tells the story of a businessman who on the outside is an arrogant, weird, yet forward-thinking person, but on the inside he is a pretty insane person who commits murders and takes part in terrible things like necrophilia, cannibalism, and rape, and just other unspeakable things. It's really screwed up. And Patrick Bateman is referred to as a psycho by others, but to be frank, he's more of a sociopath than a psychopath. Similar but on different levels. Bateman always picked his victims and covers his tracks. For instance, when he kills Paul Allen, played by Jared Leto, to cover the tracks, he goes and packs a fake suitcase and records a fake voicemail to make it sound like he's out of town. A psychopath would not think something like that through right away. They would just kill and just move on. Now, here's a short clip when we can see the processes that his mind goes through. It's actually a combination of 2 clips, and 2 of the most famous clips from the movie.
Is that a gram?
New card. What do you think?
Woohoo. Very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Rail.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this.
That is really nice.
Eggshell with Romalian type. What do you think?
Nice. Jesus. That is really super. How did a nitwit like you get so tasteful?
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
But wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. Raised lettering. Pale nimbus. White.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark.
Something wrong? Patrick? You're sweating.
No, Helen.
Is that a raincoat?
Yes, it is. In '87, Huey released this. 4, their most accomplished album. I think their undisputed masterpiece is Hip to Be Square. A song so catchy, most people probably don't listen to the lyrics. But they should, because it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself. Hey, Paul! Ah! Strike that reservation at Dorkin now, you fucking stupid bastard!
Alright, so if you've seen the movie, or even if you haven't, you've seen this scene, but you need to know the context. Patrick Bateman, he's got a bit of an inferiority complex, and he tries to show off his business cards to make himself feel better. But when he sees that his coworkers prefer Paul Allen's business card, he gets upset. Later in the movie, he takes Paul and Allen out for dinner, and he takes them back to his apartment. This is also what we saw. It's the famous scene where Huey Lewis's Hip to Be Square plays. And he says there how he just kills him because he talks about conformity and fitting in, which is something Patrick Bateman desperately wants. And in doing so, he kills Paul Allen in a way to sort of take his place in a way within that group, because they preferred Paul, and now there's kind of room for Bateman. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. 1, he wants to kill him to get him out of his way, and 2, he just wants to fit in, and killing him will get him there. So when looking at it from a behavioral psychology standpoint, Bateman's actions can be defined by his inferiority complex that leads him to take his anger out in very unethical ways. His desire for authority and status over others, referring back to the McKee study, is what causes his hunger for violence against those who he believes to threaten his position. Albeit most of these threats are entirely made up by Bateman and don't actually exist to the extent of what he imagines. Actually, we don't even know if any of these threats exist because by the end of the movie, he's questioning everything. You don't know if he really killed Paul Allen or not. You don't really know if he killed anybody in this movie. It's really trippy, and adding the behavioral psychology factor, really interesting. Now, the film portrays mental illness good in the sense that it shows psychopathic tendencies in Bateman and how he's unhinged, as well as some of the mental processes that Bateman or sociopathic killers in general go through. But there's your problem. It's a poor portrayal in the sense that this film is bringing light to a very minuscule portion of psychos that use violence for an excuse for everything that goes wrong in their life. And also, Patrick Bateman, as we said, is not fully a psycho. It's almost as if they use the word psycho just for the title.
Yeah. Wow, I never would have thought of it this way. It really comes to show how much more you can get out of a film once you really analyze it. Some of these points about how the film insinuates all psychopaths are killers would have absolutely blown over my head watching it for the first time. And the way that they make Bateman engage in these horrendous acts that inadvertently bring a negative light onto those who are actually dealing with these mental illnesses is actually quite eye-opening as well. This is the same for the next film, I believe. Now, for the next example, Split. It's interesting because it's the first case in the lineup so far that actually has a medically diagnosable condition. Now, when I first watched this, I actually thought it was interesting how it portrayed the condition, but I bet there's more behind it, right?
Yep.
That's right. Kevin, the person in the movie who kidnaps the girls, suffers from DID, dissociative identity disorder.
Dr. Fletcher.
And he has 23 distinct personalities that he possesses, and some are more prominent than others. There's also the 24th personality that emerges at the end of the film, but we'll get to that later. Throughout the movie, we see Kevin switch around between his identities and see the conflict that builds up.
This is still September 18, 2014, right? There's a shotgun I bought. It's in the bottom cabinet hidden behind things. The shells are in my uniform closet out in the service hall. Kill me. And kill me. Wait. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. He can't handle reality. My name is Jade. Has Dr. Fletcher been getting our emails? This is what we have to do. We can... As in 1008, when Anandapala suffered the Shahi's most crushing defeat and Mahmud overran the entirety of the Punjab region, taking the famed temple of Kangra, we have been wronged by this alliance, this horde of Patricia, Dennis, and the boy. Their actions do not represent us. They are Everybody just take a minute. Oh, baby girl. They've been stealing control of their life from me, but the group are gonna work through this. Honey, my name is Barry. You shouldn't have used the walkie-talkies. They almost caught us.
Stop it, Hedwig!
They were right. Look at you. You're so frightened of us. Dennis and Miss Patricia are in charge because of me. I'm gonna give the light to them now. No one's allowed to make fun of me anymore. Thank you, Hedwig. Everything's fine now.
Kevin went no grub.
Kevin is asleep. We've made him sleep far away. You can call his name all you like, dear, but he's not going to hear you. The
beast has shared with us his dream of a larger group to sustain him. 10 to 12 unworthy young next time. This is just the start.
Alright, so, as you can see, the distinct personalities all interact with Casey in different ways. Casey, by the way, is the girl from The Queen's Gambit, Anya Taylor-Joy. With each new identity taking over, they each have their own sets of memories and experiences. Now, let's get into the 24th personality that is referred to the most dangerous of them all, the Beast.
Different from the rest.
Now, this looks cool and all, but in reality, body contortions, etc., are not really part of dissociative identity. What is relevant and realistic is his motivations, which can once again be linked to behavioral psychology. In the McKee study, Kevin, who as we later found out, was a survivor of childhood abuse and neglect, which is true for most people who suffer from DID. The early trauma that he experiences from his environment shaped his behaviors later in life and are the root cause of his multiple, or as the movie likes to say, split identities. His ulterior motive for harming people also comes from that early onset pain. The Beast, the violent final form that dominates Kevin, is set on ridding the world of those who he determines to be impure, which in this case turns out to be people who have not suffered like him. This fits the McKee study's finding that people who are vengeful seek power and status. The Beast, angered by the mistreatment in his life, seeks to control and gain power over others through, well, this is actually quite stupid, killing them. And he wants to build a status for himself as no longer the victim, but someone to fear and not to mess with. And this part where the Beast attacks Casey is great, as you can see that once he discovers that she's suffered, his motivation just disappears.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, would you say that this movie is a good portrayal of dissociative identity disorder?
Like I've said with the past two films, yes and no. Like, listen, the film does a great job of demonstrating the different aspects of those who suffer from DID, but it falls short on its execution, painting those with the disorder as kidnappers, hostage keepers, and violent murderers, which is not the case at all. Psychiatrist Dr. Garrett Marie Deckel, a DID specialist at Mount Sinai's Icahn School of Medicine, said that in contrasting to Kevin's character, people with DID, who represent about 1% of Americans, are rarely violent, and research has shown that they are far more likely to hurt themselves than to hurt others. And sadly, this film tends to portray only the most extreme aspects of the disorder, which can misrepresent a form of mental health that is not well understood, like the public and even some psychiatrists, same as American Psycho.
Especially for those who may not know much about the condition, I can see how a performance like that only shows the negative parts because skew one's views on the subject. Moving on to the last case that we will be looking at today, the Netflix TV show, The Society. Now, I hear that this show has a lot of people with real, serious mental conditions.
Then you heard right. Set in the town of New Hampshire, it follows a group of high school students who come back from a trip to find that they're the only ones left in the town and there's no way to communicate with the outside world or to escape. Naturally, high school students are going to be pretty freaked out. So, The show follows these students as they've band together to form the titular society and the conflicts that happen throughout the course of the show. There are many accurate portrayals of mental illness in the show, which is very refreshing for once despite the dark tone. With main characters such as Harry, who suffers from depression, to having unrestricted access to pills, later forming an addiction. Campbell's cold sociopathy and manipulative tactics to get what he wants, a lot of suicidal ideation, which is understandable given the scenario, incel behavior by adolescent boys, and trauma as well, which is what causes the turning point at the end of the series. The show really has it all.
Yeah, and I can see how this would be a prime example of behavioral psychology at play. These kids, though some may already have been previously affected by their conditions, the symptoms and the ways that they deal with it certainly changes over time because they start to lose hope and order over their lives. Lexi, who later takes over the town with the help of sociopath Campbell and others, is a great case in illustrating how deference against authority and inequality, spurred on by her own unfortunate experiences of sexual assault during a time of need for her, led to the uprising and the crowd she was able to gather up of those who shared her frustrations.
That's very true, Michael. And what's great about this show is that despite mental illness only being a sub-theme, the performance does the people justice. I can't really find anything significantly inaccurate with how everything was portrayed because it was all excellent.
No, that's really good to hear. Now, Thomas, we're nearing the end of our show here, so could you please give a few final thoughts on if you think Hollywood does a good job at portraying mental illness in their films and shows?
Well, I think that Hollywood does both a good and a bad job. In the case of Joker, it's a good representation of mental illness, but also fantastic social commentary on the stigma against people with mental illness. As much as I love American Psycho, though, it's not exactly an excellent portrayal. The so-called psycho Patrick Bateman can't medically be called a psychopath when it seems that they just chose the term for an interesting title. How about you, Michael? From what I've said, what do you believe?
Well, I agree that it certainly is mixed. There are definitely performances that make you go, what on earth is that garbage? And which unfortunately tends to happen more than not. But then once in a while we get performances that are really extraordinary. I think that it is moving in the right direction. We're not quite there yet, but we're certainly seeing a shift in public expectations for respectful portrayals of mature subjects. So if I were to give a decision based on what I project to be the case in the future, I do believe that Hollywood is able to do an accurate and effective stories involving people with mental illness.
That's really good, and I hope that's the case as well.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I think the people really enjoyed what you had to say. Everybody, give one more round of applause to Mr. Thomas Ellinidis. Thank you, and goodbye.
Production of Our Mind was made possible by generous sponsors and viewers like you. Next week on Our Mind.
What color is the dress? Are there more doors or wheels? Is water wet?